So it was a bit of a follow-up to the S5 Mark II and S5 Mark 2X firmware updates. It did get released in the kind of Lumix Live update that they did. It was a little bit of a blink or you'll miss it kind of situation. Like they clearly had a lot of issues with like the stream. It sort of started halfway through. You heard about a few of the features and then it sort of ended abruptly. It would, it just wasn't really working. So they did cover some of it, and then as expected, no one was talking about this. So obviously anyone that's affiliated with Lumix were under embargo. That's all lifted now. There are tons of videos around about the the firmware features, and I was just going to quickly run through and kind of talk about them really. So the like I said, the stream you can't go back and watch. It's just kind of like a dead video. I imagine they'll post it as a proper video like eventually, but essentially the things that we saw before on the website, they're there now on the UK version of the website. So you can scroll down and you can see all of these things. So the sort of headline features are as expected, and they were announced as expected. The date for the release of the firmware is the 22nd of April. You can see we've got animal, eye, car, motorcycle recognition. This is actually just on the live website, so it's there. It's been announced. It was just a little bit of a shambles of an announcement, but it is sort of there. So you can see we've got a few of the different bits in there. You've also got I think in there we've got sorry, I couldn't pick that out of the text. We've got the pre-burst there. So the two things we talked about: pre-burst pre-burst photography, animal eye, car, motorcycle detection. And then there are actually a few extra bits in there. So there's this improved EIS, which is the electronic image stabilization. There were a few kind of fixes to that. And then there's also the sort of proxy side to things. So, if you shoot video, you'll probably know that proxies are just kind of like a watered down, smaller file size version of your original files. And that makes them good for, using in editing suites because it's less intensive, and they're also easier to send to people. And then they just sort of mirror where your original files are. You swap them over for when you go to render them, it just swaps them over. So that's a really nice feature. And it was probably for me actually one of the most interesting ones, because I know the G9 Mark II's got most of the things from these updates, because a lot of them came from the G9 Mark II, but the proxy recording is one thing that it doesn't have. So that probably, I imagine, will make it into that, and hopefully into the GH6, because obviously the GH line is the video orientated system, and that is really the one that should be getting the proxy video recording. So that sort of gives me a little bit of hope that somewhere down the line we're looking at a GH6 and kind of a G9 Mark II potentially update as well, just more incremental, probably not with all of this stuff. I can't imagine. I'd be surprised if they brought pre-burst and things like that into the GH6, and the stabilization things obviously, but they're camera specific, so they're not going to come. And then on top of that, I don't know if they actually mentioned it on here. I don't think they do. Let me just have a quick look. Oh yeah, sorry, it was in the bit I was already looking at. Yeah, so there's Adobe Frame.io integration. So that's good if you use that, and you can share files with people and they can sort of comment on them, and it's a whole other thing. If you don't use it, it's not for you. But it's quite interesting that they've put that in the camera, and it's actually a usable thing from within the camera, using backups from there. And probably, like I say, one of the most exciting things I saw was you can shoot to one card, do your proxies to the other card. But then even more interesting, certainly for me, because I'm using a GH6 where you can use the SSD, you can shoot to SSD and then have the proxy go to an internal card. So that sort of means that they've actually managed to get around the fact that the SSD and the internal cards are completely separated. So that sort of leads me to a little bit of hope that we'll get actual SSD recording with internal backup, because for me that's something that I really would like to see. You know, external SSD is great. It's quite rare that they corrupt. The issue for me is more the loose cables failing. There are bits there that make me a little bit anxious about it. You know, drives do fail, especially with what's happened with Samsung recently. Or not Samsung, with SanDisk recently. You know, it's all a bit concerning, but it's that sort of leads me to hope that there are other things kind of coming down the line with this as well. So it's quite good, really. It's a good update. You know, if you've got the S5 Mark II or if you've got the S5 Mark II-X, then obviously that's a really it's quite a big update. And like I say, there's tons of videos out there now with what it's all about. It's definitely happening. It's not, you know, it's not a rumor anymore. It's an actual thing. It's on their website. It's it's coming along. I've seen the 22nd. You know, I don't know if that's subject to change or anything, but you know, a couple of weeks it will sort of be there and ready to download. So fingers crossed for, you know, Micro Four Thirds users that we get a little bit of a kind of trickle down from this. I mean, especially GH6 users, it'd be quite nice if we can see some of these things. But yeah, there's some quite nice updates there. So that was it really.